Vipers.
Whoa! Hello folks, you kind of surprised me there. It's been a while since I last did an Affro's Curiosities video, and as you can see there's been a couple of changes, mainly being that I am on camera. You can see my ugly mug, so you'll be seeing more of me from now on. But enough about that, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the video, because a lot of you wanted to see a particular game come back for a more in-depth analysis, and the game in question is this one. This, folks, is Fighting Vipers. For those of you who are new here, back in May 2019 I released my 10 Sega Saturn games video, and in it I briefly covered Fighting Vipers. Most people didn't know about the game and liked what I showed. They wanted me to see if I could cover the game in more detail later on. Well, today is that day. I hope this video satisfies your curious nature. Folks, it's really cool to see that a lot of you took interest in Fighting Vipers, especially considering that I only featured the game for about 5 or so minutes, so it's nice to know that even the forgotten games can get attention if shown in the right manner. Anyway, let's turn on the Sega Saturn and see what this game has to offer. Let's start off with some history. In 1995, Sega wanted to target the Western audience more than ever, and because fighting games were very successful at this time, the Sega AM2 division decided to take that challenge, use the feedback gathered regarding Virtua Fighter's Ring Out and other criticisms, and make a brand new game. Apparently, Fighting Vipers was first shown off at the Jammer Show in 1995, with all the main characters playable, even though the game itself was still not complete. The characters apparently did not have all their moves yet. And if you're wondering what Jammer is, think of it as the Japanese version of what we call E3 over here. Sega reused the Virtua Fighter 2 engine, but they added in walls, changed the fighting style, upped the speed and the ability to break characters' armor. The whole game was made on Sega's Model 2 hardware for the arcade version. Unfortunately for Sega, the arcade version didn't do the numbers despite most critics giving the game a positive review. When the team decided to port the game to the Saturn, the console was not as powerful as the Model 2 hardware, and as we all know, developing anything on the Sega Saturn was difficult due to the complexity of the hardware. When Sega's AM2 division decided to port this game to the Saturn, the programming team consisted of 15 people, some of whom who worked on the Sega Saturn version of Virtua Fighter 2, and some of whom who worked on the arcade version of Fighting Vipers. Now, when these people tried to bring all the features of the arcade version to the Sega Saturn version, the team ran into a couple of issues. Work on the conversion began in early 1996 and would take around 8 months to complete. The team's main issue was recreating the barriers, as they anticipated this would be the most difficult part to accomplish on the Sega Saturn hardware. The armor and walls in the game were all made up of polygons in the arcade version of the game. The team had to somehow reduce the polygon count without making the elements look awful. To try and compensate for the lower polygon counts on the characters, a new form of dynamic lighting incorporating Gerudo shading was added to the Saturn version. However, to make the effect work well and keep the speed of the game as high as possible, the high resolution mode of the Saturn was not used and instead was rendered in interlaced mode, as you can see here. Luckily for Sega, the Saturn port sold extremely well, and once more critical reception of the game was very positive. Some even said that Fighting Vipers was better than Virtua Fighter. You guys can decide if that's true or not in the comment section below. Just some other quirks before we move on. One of the programmers decided, as a joke, to include Sonic and Tails fighting each other during development. Amazingly, Yu Suzuki, the producer for Fighting Vipers, decided to make a Sonic fighting game a reality, and yes, you guessed it, Sonic the Fighters was made. And yes, it uses a modified version of the Fighting Vipers engine. That to me, that's just odd. I mean, who on earth in that development team thought that was a good idea? Other weird changes made to the Saturn port of Fighting Vipers included changing honey to candy in Western versions of the game, and only including Pepsi Man in the Japanese version of the game. Why? I like Pepsi though! I believe the licensing of Pepsi in Japan was why Pepsi Man was omitted. Alright, I think that's about everything, so let's move on to the gameplay and features.
Fighting Vipers.
When we first start the game, the title screen pops up, but if we leave it alone, we get a cutscene. Oh yes, the cutscene does what any old 1990s cutscene does, shows all 8 characters and gives you some idea of their backstories with some pretty cool music in the background. Oh, and here the manual has more detailed backstories on the characters. I do miss the days when the manual had a lot of very interesting information on it, especially regarding character backstories and even movesets. At the main menu, you can see that the game has quite a few modes outside the usual arcade and versus modes. There's a playback mode for if you save a replay of a fight. There's the team battle mode, and there's the training mode, which is now standard in virtually every fighting game. Going to the arcade mode, there's all 8 characters as discussed before. There's Grace, Barn, Raxel, Tokyo, Sandman, Jane, Candy, and Picky. They all have different moves to master, different fighting styles and combinations that you, the player, will have to figure out. Get it? Wink wink training mode, that's what it's there for. You can even change the arcade settings by hitting the R button. Now, here you can change the round time, round limit, and so on. However, I simply don't get this part here where it says you can change the modes from original, arrange, and hyper. I've tried to no avail to find out exactly what any of these mean, so if anyone knows exactly what these mean in the comment section below, please tell me, because for the life of me, I can't figure it out. When you finally start playing the game, it's clear it's based on Virtua Fighter 2. The control layout is the same, which is to say there is a punch button, a kick button, a grab button, and a button for blocking attacks. The other 2 buttons on the Saturn allow for some alternative attacks to get pulled off, or allow for heavy attacks without needing a combination of buttons to pull them off. I actually love the controls here. They feel snappier than Virtua Fighter 2, and they feel more natural, as stated before. Because the arenas are enclosed, this changes up the gameplay style. Of course you can bounce on or off walls, allowing players to continually wail on their foes in mid-air, inflicting more damage that was not possible before. I also love how you can recover in mid-air from certain attacks and hit your opponent when they least expect it. I especially love bouncing off the wall and kicking my opponent away before charging at them, hitting the grab button to do a headbutt, then sweep kicking them to stun them. There's a variety of ways you can attack your foes. You can actually sidestep in this game, but I never figured out how to do it reliably. Oh, and I forgot to mention, if you do a strong enough attack at the end of each round, you can blast your foes through walls or have other things happen to them, such as this, or this, or even hang off the wall. This game really has a lot of detail in this regard. What sets this game apart from any other fighting game, of course, is the armor. By the character's health bar, you can see a human-shaped figure with color-coded bars. If it flashes green, that means the armor piece in question is damaged and can break. If it does, the part that breaks will turn red and shatter. If it does shatter, the camera angles will change around 2 or 3 times at a random angle and speed. I love when this occurs. It is a lot of fun to see, and I always shouted "wow" or "oh" when it occurs. It is very satisfying, that is for certain. When the armor does come off, any area that's exposed will allow you to inflict more damage at that specific area. This can add pressure early on, because if the armor comes off early on in a round, it will stay that way until all the rounds have been done. If you want to add pressure onto your opponent, this is the best way to do it. In fighting Vipers, you will always fight in 9 stages, and the final boss will always be a man called BM, who can be unlocked in a weaker form, who is renamed Myla. BM is very powerful. He can soak up hits, he can deflect your attacks easily, and has grabs that are hard to avoid. His blocking skills are just unbelievable. At times, simply landing a hit on him can be a chore. All of this on the normal difficulty, by the way. I would hate to think what he would be like to face on the harder difficulties. When you do win, you gain access to 2 new characters exclusive to the Sega Saturn port, Marla and the strange bear called Kuma-chan. It's a bear which barely animates and uses Sandman's moves. Got to say, it's really funny watching this character fight. I love it. Alright, let's move on to the style, graphics and sound. I really like the more western look of the game. It's very colourful, vibrant, and because the characters are all young, the clothing and environmental aesthetics reflect this too. There's graffiti on walls, places have a lot of colour to them, and the attitude from the lively characters also help establish this fact as well. It doesn't get on your nerves because the characters aren't yelling at high-pitched voices 24/7 or aren't constantly talking all the time. I also love the fighting moves too, and the animations are first class. Almost everything looks and runs smoothly in action, and even the grab animations look realistic and great. There's none of that odd jerkiness that a lot of fighting games did have back then when the transition of the grab occurs. It just looks part of the action, and I love that. I do like the graphics on show here, but sadly, unlike Virtua Fighter 2, this game runs in a much lower resolution and has interlacing, and it's pretty obvious when you watch the game in action. Sadly, because of this fact, combining these 2 aspects makes the game look all fuzzy and somewhat blurry compared to Virtua Fighter 2. It's a real shame here because the game easily could have looked more detailed and sharper. But the main issue for this reason is of course the Sega Saturn itself. As most of you know, the Sega Saturn is extremely hard to program for, and Sega's AM2 division felt this firsthand when they tried to add in features to the Sega Saturn version of Fighting Vipers. Now, to keep the game above 60 FPS and looking decent, they added in Gerudo shading, and they had to use the interlaced mode instead of the high resolution mode. Thankfully for Sega's AM2 division, their decisions allowed the game to play superbly as a result. Now, let's talk about the sound effects. The atmosphere is always different on each round. I mean, just listen for yourself. This helps give every stage a unique feel and helps you stay invested as you fight to the death. Well, not literally, but anyway. The punching, kicking, and armor sound effects are all great too. All of them have a great punch to them, and they always sound satisfying to hear. It makes you stay focused on the match, but also allows you to enjoy giving your foes a good beatdown for good measure. Finally, let's talk about the music. I really like it. I mean, okay, it's simple in its composition, and it's definitely Sega, of course. Mind you, the music here is very catchy, plus it helps elevate the excitement to the next level. There's a mixture of musical styles here, such as rock, heavy metal, or even pop-like music. Whatever the case, the music really does capture the mood of each stage. I especially love the final theme stage, as it reminds you this is the last stage before you can claim your prize as a fighting viper. I really like the second stage theme as well. It just sounds very cool yet urgent at the same time. It's a very compelling piece. In truth though, all the music in this game reminds you of its arcade origins, and that is a-okay with me. It is definitely one of the best aspects of the game, in my opinion. Okay folks, now that I've done all that, it's time to see what the game is really like. So brace yourself, I played as many characters as I possibly could, and I played through the game multiple times to make sure that I didn't miss a single thing. Now then, let's see how I did with the characters in question, and find out what it's like to really play Fighting Vipers. After some deliberation, I decided to choose Candy first. She's a really cool character. I love her kicks and she is pretty fast too. Her punches hardly miss due to the motion of them hitting opponents in the lower regions as opposed to the high, forcing your foes to block them. I must mention that her charging attacks are just, well... Anyhow, on to stage 1. Jane is a butch and muscled character. She tried to get into the Navy, but her temper was what caused her to fail that. However, this is the first round, so I did not expect much of a challenge. I will say Jane really gave me a good battle from the second round onwards. She almost got me. My slowed down approach was what saved me, however. In the last fight, I successfully broke her top armor off. After that, well, she didn't have a chance. Not bad for the first fight. Apparently, Vaughn is a 17-year-old high school student. What? No way. 17? Look at this, folks. There is no way this man is 17 years old. Video game, 17-year-olds don't look like that. Anyway, he has come to find and fight his father, who abandoned him and his mother from when he was very young. Sadly for the old barn, he was simply no match for me. No wonder his father left him. The little sod can't even put up a decent fight. I pretty much dominated the fight from start to finish. The last round was good, however. Bar nearly, and I mean nearly, beat me, but nope, not quite. Ah well, next round. Grace is a former skater who wanted to go into the professional side, but her lover and mentor sadly betrayed her, and now she's looking to get back on her feet. No, actually, I must say, what I just said there was pretty harsh. It's a good thing she can kick butt. Well, Grace can sure kick ass. Sadly for her, she met me, meaning she has no real chance of defeating me. Yes, Grace can't really get going, and now her attempt to get her career back on track has backfired in a spectacular manner. Don't worry though, folks, she will return soon enough. Wait and see. Picky is pretty much what you think he is, a stereotypical skateboarder who, well, loves skateboarding. Ugh, come on Sega, you could have made him more interesting and likeable. He's not just your average skateboarding punk, you know. Turns out, he skates to impress his lover, but ended up leaving her for candy. Oh no. Time to teach this punk a lesson in pain, baby. Yeah, Picky has failed to impress me, leaving his lover for us, hey? Big mistake, my friend. You see, I whooped his behind real good. That'll show the no-gooder why you don't crush on candy. This 16-year-old was once the leader of a motorcycle gang, but left when he caused the death of a gang member from another clan. He is seeking a new challenge and wants some thrills. If he wants thrills, then he'll get some. In pain, that is! No, sorry. No offense, but this guy looks like trouble. So, I'm going to deal with him the only way possible. Fighting him, baby. The fight is even at times, but just as before, my skills and aggression definitely swung the fight in my favour. It is funny how this sod wanted a fight yet can't deliver when fighting me. Guess his tough guy exterior was just for show. As I always say, no bite, no point. Don't show up and move out of my way. Now, since I won, where's that jam donut? There is absolutely nothing to know about this man at all. Well, other than he likes scooters and that his birthday is on March the 3rd. If this man has no purpose being here, then why did you include him? If he has no purpose, then he must disappear! Oh wow, okay. This guy is giving me a good beating. He's rolling me like a bowling ball. He's wrecking me. And countering everything I do. This guy plays too well to be just a nobody. He may have me on the ropes, but remember, I take no prisoners alive in this court. After changing tactics and carefully choosing my time to strike, I finally get the upper hand. Then, well, he was a worthy opponent, but once again, he was a letdown at the final hurdle. My clone has come out to play, I see. Well, if she wants to see what the original is capable of, then bring it! Oh, what a pity. I destroy her in every match. I even kicked her ass through the glass. That'll teach you for messing with me, sister. This is why you cannot compare to me. Besides, I was the one that won all the money all those years ago. Remember? No? Well, it doesn't matter because I'm a winner! Raxel is the lead singer and guitarist in his own band. Possibly it's called the Kiss ripoff. I mean, look at him. He looks like a Kiss member. Anyway, he's in the tournament because he wants to become famous and a rich mother trucker. For the record here, jam donuts are rich and you don't see me boasting about them. I'll give Raxel credit. He was no pushover. A noble fighter with a guitar. Well, a cool guitar to be fair. In any case, I had to work very hard to win, and although he almost beat me, I still ended this man's dream of becoming a rock star. Allow me to take the fame instead. I wonder how many ham sandwiches I could possibly buy when I'm famous. Well folks, here we are. This is the boss, BM, also known as Mailer, but OP as hell. He is a very tough foe. His attacks are lethal, he can pull combos out of thin air, and the grabs he does almost seem unblockable at times. Because he does them so quickly too, even dodging the grabs seem at times impossible. The first round was an easy victory for me. But BM then showed his true colours afterwards. He's a lean, mean fighting machine. He will constantly make you curse as you fight. In my case, you sod! Oh, fuzz off! Blast! Holy mackerel! I blame the jam donuts on this. I did manage to win, just however, and it was super sweet indeed. With that concluded, I then got to see highlights of all my fights with screenshots of what Candy did after the tournament. It's nothing amazing, but it's better than just the credits I suppose. I will admit though, the highlights of me finishing off my opponents is pretty satisfying, so that was a good thing Sega did. Now that you saw what you saw, I would tell you exactly how I did with some of the other characters I used, but in a brief manner. Ready? Here we go. Righty ho, here is Grace, the roller skater lady. I'm looking forward to seeing how well I do with her. As to not repeat myself countless times, I'll sum it up in a shorter time frame. Overall, I felt Grace was a character that, while really skilled and powerful, she was much harder to control than Candy. The reason being is that Candy's moveset is pretty easy to figure out, whereas Grace is more complicated and requires more skill to get the best out of her. With that being said, I had a lot of fun trying her out, and I feel her low sweeping kick was my most used move on my enemies. I had some luck pulling off some of her combos, and I love her punches that seem to never stop. She has some serious stamina to do that. However, I almost gave up on the boss battle with BM as I struggled to beat him. He constantly whooped my ass and I was unable to beat him for the longest time. In the end, I did not give up, and after what felt like an eternity, I prevailed. Now, who is my next character to use, I wonder?
3 wins!
Marla was missing some basic parry moves which would help counter weaker moves, and his defense seemed to be on par with everyone else's. Of course, Sega's AM2 division had to weaken him somehow, and they chose to do that, so I didn't really get a lot of moves out of Marla. Whether that's intentional or me not really experimenting that much, I have no idea. One thing is for sure, however, this man is strong, very strong. He is a tank, and his moves deal massive damage when they actually work. Of course, Marla is a gimped version of BM, so I felt I got knocked down more than any other character. Still, it was great to smash and beat everyone up. I even showed BM a thing or two when he tried to end me. I do like this guy, I just need a lot more practice, but when I do get the practice, I will be colossally strong and I will dominate anyone who gets in my way. Kuma-chan is this weird bear that barely animates. I just love it. How often can you say I got beaten up by a non-animating bear? I find that brilliant. No, but seriously, in all seriousness, Kuma-chan was a lot of fun to use, and even when I was losing the matches, it was still funny. I mean, come on, look at this. How can you not laugh at that? It was absolutely fantastic. Yes, I'm a child, so what? The move where he jumps in the air and body slams the opponent reminded me of that scene in Ed, Edd and Eddy. Oh, sorry, back on track. Kuma-chan has the same moveset as Sandman, and to be fair, it's not bad at all. Slow and exposing at times? Sure, but powerful? Absolutely! The moveset also covers a lot of ground, which helps pin the opponents. I love when Kuma-chan's armor breaks. He turns into a smaller bear, which makes no sense. Maybe he's becoming less of a bear? I do not know. The ending for this bear is great. I mean, just look at these scenes. He can't stop smiling though. He has smile-itis. Maybe he's happy he beat everyone up? We will never know. What we have here, folks, is a 3D fighting game that needs to be revived. Fighting Vipers was a lot of fun, and although there's not a lot of variety, what is presented here is top notch and worth hunting a copy for yourself. The game is full of great, refined action and will keep you coming back for more. The fights are rewarding, blasting the armor off is very satisfying, and did I mention knocking people through walls is awesome too? Sega's AM2 division outdid themselves with this game. They turned a struggling arcade game into a bestseller on the Sega Saturn. Yes, the game could look a bit better and we should have had Pepsi Man like the Japanese version, but never mind. This is still worthwhile. Well folks, hopefully that deeper look into Fighting Vipers was well worth it. Now, if you guys are still on the fence about getting a Sega Saturn just for this game here, I say it's well worth it. There's a decent amount of features, the fighting is great, and the history behind the game was really cool as well. Not to mention that having a non-animated bear in the game to fight or fight against was absolutely bloody great and hilarious, and if you can get the Japanese version, you get to play as Pepsi Man! Yeah, I know, sorry. Anyhow folks, let me know your thoughts on this video and, more importantly, what you thought of that deeper look into Fighting Vipers. Until then folks, hopefully you've enjoyed my comeback video, and until next time, I will see you later.